This is about my spiritual journey, a time after the cartoon controversy in Denmark, a controversy and the story that I told about in details in my book, My Farewell to Islamism from 2014, and went into depth with in my second book in 2018, The Courage to Doubt. And I've always wanted to make a third book, but I never got the chance yet about the psychological journey that's behind and beneath these two other levels. The first level is the political and ideological level. When you try shifting your views on that and you try thinking in a new ways, a lot of things happens in your mind, and you need new input, and you need to compare things to each other and see them how they work in both in ideas and in reality. And the second level is about doubting, like the basic view that you have been carrying with you. You're looking into both your identity, but also the way of thinking that have led you to where you were standing, and looking in depth into the philosophy and the religious ideas that have been forming you. That's not an easy process at all. It's actually pretty tough. And so, what happens in the psyche and psychologically to a person in such matters? That's what I haven't been able to talk about, and that's not my topic for today. But I hope I will get there one day, or by the help of someone, like get through to a publisher, that I can make a book about that third and very important level, because psychology is what makes the other two overbuilding works. But today I would like to talk about my psychological, my spiritual journey that happened after the cartoon crisis. It didn't happen immediately. It took some years. It started like slowly in 2007-8, where I started like getting shaky about the situation that I was in, and also the people that I was surrounded by in the Muslim community, and the many groups and ideas and ideologies fighting inwards and outwards. I couldn't be in it anymore. So after many discussions with people I know, and discussions with myself, and thoughts, started of course reaching out to new heights and depths, and started looking back to my education, my formal education as a teacher, and my interest for philosophy and history, and trying to find some source of understanding. And I found it was in the early days of YouTube, not like today, where you can like publish anything and you have tons of loads of information out there. But I found a guy called Wesley Cecil from United States um, talking about the great philosophers, and I've always liked to read about these philosophers, and knew a little bit about them from my study. But here I got a chance to dwell a little bit more on some of them, and maybe later get some summary of their books and their ideas. And that I did, not for the first time 2007, but it was at the first time in 2006-7 that it had another and new meaning for me. I was gonna use it as a platform to look back into who I was, and if there was any possible other way for me to get on with my life, and where did I go wrong. My ideology was one thing, and my beliefs was another. I wasn't going to look into my belief system as a whole, and I wasn't going to look into my belief in God's existence, and the belief in our spiritual journey from this life to another, and its logical aspects and its importance. But I was going to look into my Islamic ideology, and I did that slowly and over time. And then in 2008, I made a big decision by holding the last three speeches in mosques in Denmark, saying farewell to my role as a preacher and a guide for people. I used to preach in classical Arabic and in Danish at the same time, and I left that, and I told people I'm not able to do that anymore, and I don't feel at home with all the struggle that's going on in the Muslim communities. And I remember one guy in Odense, he was sitting far behind the wall. He put his finger in the air and gave me a thumbs up for a very long time, and something I haven't seen before. And then I took off my headscarf and said that I please, I'm not a leader or any community person you should look up to from now on, because I knew I was on a road of my own, a road of doubt, and a road of getting mixed up with a lot of things. And I don't want to take people along with me. This is my journey, and I don't want to be a fake, two-faced man who kept preaching things he stopped believing in or didn't want to keep going on with. So that's a part of being transparent, that I did that. And soon afterwards, I published the last book I did publish at that time about some of the basic 5 pillars of Islam, how to practice them, how to understand them. It was a translation of a book of Faisal Mawlawi, the judge from Lebanon, who was one of the main persons I looked up to at that time. And the book was given out for free with support of some organizations, and I didn't get any money for it at all. And then I left for a work in Greenland, and it was there that the shift really started. The time in Greenland was for me very important and very crucial. It all came because I had 2 years in Denmark without getting any job and without any of my Muslim or Islamic colleagues looking after me or looking towards my needs and trying to get me out of that hellish situation in Denmark where everybody hated me, whether they knew what I did or not. And some of them, and many of them, thinking that I did things that I really didn't do. And that's easy to hate persons, as I said in another video, just because you have a prejudice against them and you have your own way of thinking about who they are, and then you already think you can judge them and that you know what they are, who they are, and they are going to hell. And that's so common among people around the world. That's so low IQ that you are very quickly to judge and put people in hell or heaven because you think you are on the right path. And that's not only for the Muslim and Islamic side, that's also for the Christian and Jewish and non-Muslim and non-Christian, non-Jewish, the non-religious side as well. People are just easy going on judging each other very quickly. And so I was in that hellish situation, and like a small miracle from angels' hands, I sent this text I sent my CV, and I sent a cover letter to this school in Greenland. And I didn't really at all expect anything else but a rejection. But I learned very early on that you have to keep trying, keep knocking on the doors. I read Helen Keller, and if a door closes, another door will open. And God was saying to me also in the Quran, which I read at that time very deeply and still had a very close connection to, that with the trouble times comes easiness. With troublesome things comes easiness. It was repeated 2 times. So it's about keep going on and not letting go. And I had that story in my head about the 2 frogs who fell into the milk, and one stopped staring because he got tired, and then he drowned, and the second one kept going on without any hope inside. He couldn't get out of the barrel, but because he kept going and going and going, something happened, that the milk transformed into that heat, and with his foot leg, it became a solid cream, and then he could in a way step up a solid butter, and he could step up and jump out of the barrel in the end. So never give up hope was one of the things I had with me. And also I needed the job because I had a daughter, and I just got a son that year, was born or was going to be born that fall. So I had to support myself and my family from what I know best, educating and teaching and delivering topics at school. That was what I was educated to do, and that was basically what I knew. I could also translate and work in translation of books and society, but that also stopped because they didn't want me. They wanted everybody else, but not that guy. He's not welcome, you know. And so I needed to get out of the situation, and by a miracle, the answer came positively that if you want, you're welcome. We're happy that you applied here, and we need good teachers, so we can send you the ticket. And in all secrecy, I never told anyone about my travel to Greenland. I told only in the final days. I told my very good Danish friend, whom I never lost contact to, and my parents at that time, my wife, and one other good friend. And that was all. And then I went to Greenland in 2008, summer 2008, for the first time, and I explain about it in my book. And from there started my mental journey, slowly but surely, digging into new books, new insights. And I had a lot of time. Greenland was a great place. It's like the most far away place you can get to, with a lot of nature, and many months with very cold weather. You are stuck inside, or you have a lot of time on your hands. The distance between the school and your home is my 5 to 10 minutes, and then you can use your time more efficiently than if you had to drive an hour or two every time you had to go to or from job, or taking the metros or something like that. So I had all that time. I started looking and digging, but I didn't like leave my belief at all. I kept holding on to it. I was a true believer, and I held into God and the prayers, and I started translating a new book about my Muslim faith. I wanted to translate how the Prophet taught people. There was a book made by a Syrian scholar called Abu Gudda, who wrote a beautiful book with verified sources on different ways the Prophet of Islam talked to people and taught them, and sat with them and spoke to them, and helped them out. And it was very enlightening, and I wanted to share that as well with a Danish and more broad public. But I couldn't get on with anything. I was stuck in my head and in the crisis and the trauma, and why everything had happened like it did, and why we lost, and why I was like abandoned the way I was, and what happened to all these groups around me, and had I gone wrong at one point, and was I at all a good person? And all these things started really nagging me very, very deeply, and I started looking deeper into it. I tried talking to one of my Muslim friends. I remember at that time, one of my old teachers from the northern part of Denmark, and he really annoyed me by saying, "Well, now you can be a missionary up there. You're all alone, the only Muslim, so you have the whole chance being a missionary up there." I never spoke about wanting to be a missionary. I was wanting to talk about being in doubt, and what happened, and how I came to where I was. And then he said something like that. It was totally annoying to listen to. He didn't have any sense of relating to my situation. So I left those talks and didn't talk to him at all after that, even though he was an old and good friends. I had to dig on my own. I understood that at that time, and really didn't have a lot of help beside the books and beside what I could think I could get to. So in those 2 years in Greenland and 3 years that followed, I had a long and slow process, and that's important, to make it a slow process, not to rush yourself into just changing your mind and shifting your ideas and standing on a new position, or denying God, or accepting a new religion. It's not as easy as that. First of all, because you will shake yourself up too much, and you will get out of balance your identity and everything about you. You will become a crazy person who will not be able to relate to your environment, neither teach. So I took it in small paces. I kept who I was as I was, and people knew my background up there. They found out relatively quickly, the others who didn't know. And I had the Danish media and some of the right-wing people writing letters to that place, saying that they should fire me, they shouldn't hire me. And the party of the folk people in Denmark, they asked the prime minister, the same prime minister who was during the Khartoum crisis, to comment on how I was part of a public school in Greenland that belonged to Denmark. So they were really harsh in their thoughts. I don't know if these people ever look into themselves, and how they look at others and treat them, and how they have these views on people like me. It hurt me a lot. But I knew they were like a kind of an enemy anyhow, so I knew what to expect other than this harshness. But it was a miracle that I got through, and the Greenlandic people in that small settlement of Nasak, and the school inspector and the other colleagues, in a very, very polite and clever manner, they could distinguish, and they could see me as a person, as the one I was, as a teacher and a friend and a colleague who sat joking and laughing with them at the tables, and was very polite and good to talk to. And they started inviting me out on trips, and visiting them at home, and so on. So they started like relating to me in a different manner, and they didn't want to listen to those racist voices at all. They actually got annoyed by it, and maybe that was what tricked having me continue up there. That these very harsh and in my eyes very dark and heartless voices, they are persecuting me even to the farthest end of the north area of Denmark, in Greenland, and not relating to my situation or any perspectives or any kind of positiveness towards anything at all. We keep getting preached in the Danish society and school, and we keep teaching and learning about seeing perspective and being pragmatic. And these people, I can tell you, there is none of this. This is just crush that man down, whatever the cost. I had 2 kids and a wife, and they saw me as the biggest enemy of the state that ever lived. And that's a distorted picture, as they came to learn later when I published my books. But my idea was not to publish books. It was to look into myself and to look into my thoughts, and they didn't know anything about that. So it was a dangerous road I was walking, and I was starting to push back also at my old friends, the Islamic groups and parties. I didn't want to have anything to do with them at that time, because I needed peace, and I didn't need to get affected by any of their ideas or thoughts at that time. I needed some neutral people to talk to, and I found a few in Greenland, and I had some at that time Skype conversations. That was the way to communicate out of the area with a few of my closest friends, and starting like relating to these issues. And so to make a long journey a little bit shorter, even though it's hard, it was a very tough process, and it was a slow process, and it's important to make it slow and don't make it a rush, and make it something you just walk into very quickly. And I see many people, they shift because they hate someone, or they get abused, or someone starts like it happened to me. They get abandoned, or maybe they felt they lost, and they want to change the views. And that wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to see whether I went wrong or not. And I had read a book while I was at the university by Berger and Lockman from the 60s, talking about the social constructed society. And part of that was describing how religious groups use different means of power to suppress the other ideas. And I took that book with me and started reading in it again and more in depth. And I could see some of the traits they were mentioning actually folding out in front of my eyes when I was in the Islamic community. So there was some very realistic truth about that the overbuilding of the conservative ideas in religion, orthodox ideas, was not only serving God and believing in the afterlife, but it was also means of power and means of suppressing the opposite ideas as dangerous and keeping them at bay. And so they do to each other, all of them. And the same goes on in the secular societies. They also oppress the religious ideas because they see them as dangerous, or opposing ideas in the universities. Look what happened to different professors around the world because they opposed several notions and ideas in history and politics, not because they are necessarily right, but there should be a space to doubt and to speak about anything. That's the ideal that we have learned in the West. And not being that one-sided idea that democracy becomes the new religion, and the philosophy of atheism becomes the only and one and true way of looking at things. There must be always, for any society who wants to grow, any person who wants to understand and to relate, there must be colors, and there must be ways of looking at things with doubt. And so I could see that in that book of Berger and Lockman, one of the classics from the 60s in sociological studies, that I wanted to understand. And I also read Zygmunt Bauman's books at that time, and found also great ideas that I could see myself into and see that I have lived myself through. So it was a small and short and intense process. I took myself took myself through, not just because I wanted to change, but because I wanted to know where I went wrong. And I started thinking, if I was born in a Christian community, or I was a son of a Hindu, or maybe my parents were atheists and brought me up on that way, or maybe I was born in a total different area of the world, in another culture, how would I have been brought up to see the world? I wouldn't have liked the Muslims. I maybe would hated the Islamists, and I maybe would have looked at religion as the worst thing that happened to humanity. And the opposite would have been the truth, that if I was born in a very religious community, or with parents who were very strict, closed-minded, and manipulating in their way of teaching their kids, I would have seen any logical idea or any scientific thoughts or any doubt of religious thoughts and ideas as a way of getting into hell and darkness. And so I wanted to see, well, I'm a social construction. Somehow I was given to be born to that father and that mother from a Lebanese community in northern Lebanon. My mother was a seamstress, and my father was a small. He was like a worker in the harbor, and became a leader of a group, and not a political group, but a group of workers at the harbor, and got some good money, and was between the traditional and the modern life of society. And that was what I was brought up into. It wasn't a strict religious community, but it was a traditional community with religious issues in it as well, and all the highlights from Lebanon was also there as a background. So I wanted to really see what did I do with my life. I went on a spiritual journey as a teenager, and I went to search for a deeper meaning. I didn't fit in society. I was awkward in many ways, a small guy. I got the shortness from my mother, and I know many people don't want to talk about these things like modern taboos, but that's can be a big problem for a man if you are short-legged. All her brothers are 178, 180, 182. She's the only one who is so small, and I got that from her as well. And so I knew as a teenager I had to struggle to get the attention both of the girls, and I knew I would struggle like mere physically to outrun the most handsome and beautiful guys, and the ones who could do the work, and many of the girls got attached to. So I had to find my strengths, and I found it in my brains and in my mouth. I was a good communicator, and I was a charming young man, but I had to find all that and the strengths in all that, and that led me actually to find a spiritual journey for myself, because I just didn't fit in this what I called mediocre way of living, just going home and going out and sitting here, sitting there, picking a fight or picking the land, and going out to find a girl and all that. Maybe also because it wasn't easy for me. I wasn't that same type of attractive guy that these girls were attractive to. I was also a foreigner, a dark-haired man from another place and with another religion and background, even though we weren't all that religious in our family. And we didn't try to stick out, but people knows, and people in these communities, they want some of their own. They don't like marrying or getting deep girlfriends and boyfriends from another societies. That took many years for the Danes and Norwegians and people like that to open up. Like a girl having an African boyfriend or an Asian boyfriend, that's not easy, and it's still not all that the easiest thing. And the same goes for the Arabic and Muslim communities. It's a big issue, and for the Eastern communities even more difficult. If a girl from there gets into a relation with a man from the West, that's not her culture. But now today, with all the internet and the media, it's like the youth has broken those barriers, at least online. And maybe when they become parents, they will see it as much normal thing that if the daughter or the son gets into a relation with a person from another culture, they still have the same common dominators. Like they are like brought up in a more global way of thinking and in a shallow way of thinking. Sorry to say. and people are not so rooted in their cultures as they were before. But we can also see the tendency of the opposite going on today, that people are getting back to be very narrowly rooted in one kind of thinking, and they only want to relate to people from that same thinking. And that's understandable. That's very, very understandable, because that's what gives you safety and gives you like predictions in the way of living. It gives you the routines. You don't have to discuss everything. And marriages and relations that are like crossed between cultures and people are not easy to live with and inside, because people have to struggle to get out in an understanding. And if they get the misunderstanding, it can be hard to build a bridge again. And many kids can be brought up in such families or between such two persons. And when they fall apart and go from each other, it's very hard for the kids, because now they are not only a part of two parents, but two cultures or more at once. And so at that time, I had a hard time, like getting through. I got through by playing football. I was an average good player, but not the best. So I went the spiritual way, and we had some crisis in our home, and we had crisis because of my parents leaving for Lebanon, trying to rebuild the society with all the others, and that was totally wrong. That was a very, very failed plan that my parents took on, and they acted so quickly and impulsively, especially my father, that things didn't go as planned. And that gave me also another frustration in my life, that I had to go back to the asylum centers when we came back to Denmark. I had already experienced it as a kid, as a 7-year-old minor who flew out of the country with his parents, and had to run away from the war, and was taken out of our beds and homes because of the Syrians invading our country and the fractions fighting each other on the streets. And as a kid, you don't know anything else. You find the protection in the nearest persons you get. And then we got to this place, to Denmark, and we didn't fit in. And then we went back. My parents went back because the civil war ended in Lebanon, and wanted to rebuild there. But these things didn't go as planned. The society wasn't able to carry people, inflation and all the other stuff. So they had to retrace and get back. And that gave me a lot of frustration. I was getting in the beginning of my teenage years, and you can see the traumas building up and the troubles building up, and you have to keep cool and you have to keep your head straight. And I used all my powers to do that. And I had, fortunately, a lot of brain power to be able to make sense of what's around me, starting with like relating and starting to get out of that small environment to a Danish school and Danish friends. And I got a lot of help from my former teacher at that time and the classmates to make sense of my everyday life. And so did my sisters, who also had the same situation, but they were minors. So I think I struggled a lot with that in the beginning, and when they grew up, they got the same struggle. And so at the school, it made sense, but when we got back to the asylum center, it didn't make sense. And from there, I started like looking for a third window, a third opportunity, a third way out. And that way was upward. And that was through a very polite and easygoing Lebanese man whom I used to run with, and he had a Danish girlfriend, so I thought it was fairly okay. And he started like showing me the path and the way of looking upwards, looking to the light of the spirituality, and looking in depth of getting a relation with religion. And I was very doubtful at that time, and I didn't want that. But later on, I started like looking into it. Sometimes you are searching, and something is searching for you as well at the same time, and it finds you and it takes you along. And so I tagged along for a time or two, and I started seeing that this environment could give me an alternative. I don't know if I could see it reasonably, but I could feel it. Many times we feel impulsively what's good for us or what we need without really reflecting on it. The reflection sometimes comes later, at that age especially. So I started like combining my school life with that alternative religious life, and it felt so good, peaceful in the beginning. And I had all these these very, very practical teachings of how to clean yourself up and how to stand in prayers and how to, not the least, clarify your heart and make it obvious, transparent, that you are only seeking God and God alone, and God's mercy and love and help, and that you should be fearing God's punishment as well. So it was these three tangents, and I was between them, and that I had to practice meditation in the prayers, not and not let my thoughts run away while I was praying. And that helped me a lot, because then I started training the way of focusing during the prayer. So from the moment you got into the prayer until you finished, 3 or 4 or 5 minutes after, depends on how long time you can keep it going, or you want to keep it going. Some can keep it going for 15-20 minutes or more, but from the start of this prayer, you had to learn and train to keep any thoughts out of your head. And I can tell you from the beginning, they started coming with big force. All the thoughts that I don't want to think of. It's like when you say, I don't want to scratch my nose, and then you get this urge to scratch your nose, and you want to say, now I'm praying, I don't want to think about anything else but God's greatness and grace, and being grateful to that source of life. And then you feel every other thought coming running at your door and wanting you to deal with them. And I had to learn to keep that focus slowly out of my head and keep my body still, because in prayers you cannot just move as you like, and you cannot speak. You have to be silent, and you have to be sitting as still as you can. And that was a very good training for me, and my heart started opening up, understanding more and more. I can tell you the process of learning the Quran itself and the Arabic language, whom I almost forgot, was a very difficult process. But once I got more and more into it, and I saw these brothers from North Africa and Somalia, and some of them were Arabic, but mostly these Somalian people, really into these prayers and the circles of learning the practices of the religion in daily life, and how the focus was very beautifully on don't say any bad words, don't speak unnecessarily, don't think bad of your brother, and don't speak in the back of anyone, don't fill your heart with hatred or with envy or greed, and try to take the world out of your heart and let it be in your hands instead. And you came into this world naked and with nothing, and you're gonna leave naked and with nothing. And when you came here, something gave you life, and that's the source you have to be grateful to. And when you get out, that source will take your life to somewhere else, and that's what you have to prepare for. It was so beautiful. It gave me a reason, a meaning, an alternative to all that other way of life that many people were satisfied in because they fit into it, but I didn't fit into it. So it was easier for me to find a new and a different way of attachments. And so started my biggest spiritual journey as a teenager, and I started digging into those books and thoughts that were in that library from the from the scholars of the Middle Ages and the Islamic scholars. That was the height of the Islamic period, where there was actually more enlightenment than there is today, and more understanding than there was today. And I started reading Al-Ghazali, and I understood that he was a philosopher who had a long journey as well. And I started reading some of the practical issues of religion and practice. And I also started to understand the Quran in depth, and how it is formed, and how it should be understood and lived. And I started living with the stories of the prophets, from Adam, Noah, Abraham, not the least, and his sons, and Joseph, and what happened after to Moses and Aaron, and up to the time of Jesus, the biggest revelation in that time, and the biggest miracle that God had sent people from a woman's womb, and with no father, and related to him that the example with Jesus was like the example with Adam. He created him of dust and said to him, be, then he came to be. And that was the the religious argument for praising these people, that they were bringers of light when people went astray and lived in a very materialistic way, not attending to the values they should attend to, and the ways of the heart and the way of the spiritual practices. And I also got in touch with some of the spiritual teachings of the Sufis, and the sayings they had, and that mysteries lies sometimes hidden just behind the surface of what you read or understand or think, and that God is something that you cannot in any way imagine or understand. And I found the same reasoning in the more orthodox way of Islam, and the most conservative Puritanian ways as well, speaking about God in a very, very glorifying way. In Arabic, he's known as Allah, but in other societies, it's God or Yahweh or the Creator, or the biggest being of light, or the source of everything. And so I got this picture of this great God whom we cannot relate to, but we can relate to his work and to his words and what he tells us about himself. And we cannot compare whatever he tells us about himself to things in this life. When he says, "I'm the light of heavens and earth," we cannot imagine what kind of light that is, but we understand what light is, and we understand how light works, and that's what we can do, only what we can do. When he says, "I'm with you wherever you go, and if you ask me, I will give you," and when he says that if you come walking towards me, I will come running towards you, and if you ask me and pray to me, I will be there and listen to you, and that God smiles to a person who has gone astray and then took himself up and found the way again. So many beautiful phrases and sayings and anecdotes that are really filled my life with a lot of joy and greatness. And I was isolating myself more and more from society. That's a necessary process for everyone who's going on a spiritual journey, actually. And that's a part of going on a spiritual journey. Not to let much of your power and energy be drained by a lot of lower level things in society. I know that sounds strange to many people, like going to a big ceremony, or attending some kind of seminar, or maybe being a part of 2 days program of travel or something that can be a drainage for your spiritual gathering. But it can also be necessary experiences. That's not because the religious ideas were against it, but if you really want to dig into that, you have to isolate yourself as much as you can from anything that can disturb your transparentness and your clarifying process of your heart. And the most beautiful example I got from that time on my spiritual journey at that time was that life is like a kind of life was the heart. That the heart was like a kind of something that you can look into and out of. If you know how to look with your heart, like the third eye, as they say today, and then you can see things that are hidden, not illusions, and not just fantasies, but you can see beyond things, and you can understand that a tree is not merely a tree, it's also a life form. You can see that the table I'm sitting at now is actually something that's been created of something else, and that it had its own life, and that if you see clearly, you will also be able to look clearly at yourself and what you're doing right and wrong, and you have to do that every day. Look back at your actions and live on the path like that, and then you will get you are in the light in that way, because you cannot go astray. And if you hurt anyone, you will correct it, and if you hurt yourself, you will do something about it, and that way you will always be refreshing yourself on the way of the spiritual journey. And I learned that this heart can be attacked by all kind of things that can make it hard to see from the heart and feel from the heart, and have your heart as sensitive as possible. Your psyche should be as sensitive as possible. The heart here is not that pump that they can change today with a titanium pump as well. And I know physicians, they will say we have opened the heart, there's nothing in it, it's just a pump, it's just a muscle. But here, the heart is what's inside you. It's like what's in your chest of feelings and emotions. And I know the argument at that time as well from my friends and from studies. I was studying two things at one time. I was in the religious area, but I was at the same time going to ordinary school and high school and later seminarium and later university. So I was taking in a double-sided education and double-sided views of the world and life, and I'm very well aware that the non-spiritual and non-religious people will say, well, this is nonsense because it's all from the brain waves and it's all electricity. Everything you feel and any emotion you get is just because you react to it. It's just a cause and reaction of something that happens to you, and it's all about how you control your brains and your brain power, and that there is a big truth in that as well. But I can't see that it necessarily contradict that the deeper meaning of this spirit and spiritual ways are there as well. And this is not the time to talk about that philosophical aspect. But I was saying at that time I could be very much aware of myself and my heart, and that was a very beautiful spiritual journey that gave me a lot of inner peace and light and happiness. And I was happy to be among those that God loved. And I read the text saying that if God loves someone, he will call out to Gabriel and the angels and say, I love this person, so I would like you to love him. And these angels would love the person as well and spread the world across the heavens, and then acceptance will be put on earth for this person. And if God hates someone, or someone makes God hate him or doesn't like him, the world will be spread to the angels, and the angels will spread it out in the world, and rejection will be put out on the way of this person. And I've lived both. I really can say I've really lived it. I lived it in those times where nothing could hurt me and nothing could get into my way, and even the most difficult situations I got in, they got solved. We got to stay in Denmark, or all of a sudden it was like a miracle. We had 2.5 years staying in the asylum center. Nobody helped us. No one came to our rescue, and I don't know if it was a rescue or a curse in a way, but I can say nobody came to do anything for our cause. And I remember that after I started my spiritual journey, things felt easier. I had a hard time in the beginning accepting that I was in an asylum center. I was outside society and I had to go to Danish school. All the while I was outside of it all, and I couldn't get myself to bear all that, and I wanted more, and my ego was like, just why me, and why the others, and why is this happening? And all the same thing that people go through when they are over focused on their ego and their being, and that they are like the gods of earth and their own lives, and there is nothing that could hit them or get into their way. But when I started on my spiritual journey, I actually got the deeper sense of getting out of myself, getting out of this body, and getting out of always be self-centered, and understanding that life can be troublesome and can be hurting and can give you a lot of challenges, but God is there and he will reward you accordingly. And everyone who got lost, even the smallest thing, he will get it back, and he will get it back in a way that would be very satisfactory, and that put my heart and my mind to peace. It seems like an illusion, and it seems like something you say to kids to make them sleep at night, and well, it helped my sleep, so what the heck, you can say what you want about it. It changed my life, and it made me a much more peaceful and easygoing man. And from that on, we started getting help. People liked us, and they helped us out of the situation, and they forced the minister to give us an asylum, and we stayed in Denmark. I know many people are shaking their heads and taking themselves to the head, saying, oh, if they just didn't let this guy stay here, we wouldn't have had the Khartoum crisis. But, well, I wasn't the solemn guy that did the Khartoum crisis, as I told in another areas of my speeches. But anyhow, there is a meaning of some of all this. And what I'm saying is that my spiritual journey had a big impact and effect on my life. And it went so deep that I started reading deeper in some of the ways that you can get to higher steps of really, really not letting anything in life affecting you. That was like Star Wars. It was like the Master Yoda way, like the way of the Force, of just accepting what's going on and knowing that a solution will present itself. I loved that, and I could see it cohered with my beliefs. So I was on that way, and I could read it in my spiritual text, saying that one time a young man was riding just behind riding behind the Prophet, holding his arms around his back, and he turned to him and said to him, "Young man, you must know that nothing that God is willing to give you can be taken from you, and nothing that God wants to not have you have will be ever given to you, and you must rejoice in thankfulness for what you've got, and be patient when you lose." And such words were very deep in their impact, and I started listening to explanations of all these words in the cassettes and texts that I read at that time and listened to at that time in the 90s. We are speaking here 97, 96, 98, and that was the cassette, the cassette recorder and the cassette tape that was the main communication way, and some people had recorded very beautiful inspirational speeches by preachers from the Middle East and the Gulf area and the eastern areas of the Muslim world, and they got to Denmark, and I listened to them very passionately, and I understood from that story and other stories that followed that I can live a life without sorrow, and I lived it. I really lived it in those years. And I was fulfilled by it and filled up with it. But then, at the same time, I got the implications and what you say, the effects and the contacts from the more Islamic political wings of those religious people. They wanted me as part of the religious group and started giving me ideas beyond the spirituality that I was seeking, and I got into some of that, and I chose one of the ways which I talked in detail about with the Italian professor Lorenzo Vidino, who published it in one of his books, because he's a scholar on Islamic movements and with a special focus on the Muslim Brotherhood. And so my gate into the Islamic ideas and ideology came through that. And I can talk about it in another video, or else this will be so long stretch that it will take hours to get out of. But well, my spiritual journey had suddenly also another side of it. It had a more fundamental political ideology that started also forming more and more in my head, that I was also a missionary, and that I was also a man who should bring the message out, and we should transform society in a way or another to become more according to God's way. That's our duty. We cannot just be passive bystanders. And that started affecting me more and more, but I didn't know at that time that it's actually in some ways opposite of my spiritual journey, because spirituality and spiritual journey urges you to basically and mainly look into yourself, because whatever you do, you will be lacking a lot of things. And when you start wanting to affect others, you lose some of what that energy you had to use to keep affecting yourself to stay on the path. And negative things start coming into your mind and head, like when you become a preacher, you become a speaker, or you get a crowd around you, or people get affected by you. Something gets into your heart and into your mind of selfishness, self-graciousness, and the feeling of satisfaction of people applauding you or looking up to you or finding satisfaction in you. They should all, by themselves, find satisfaction in contact with the spiritual spheres of God and the other life, and not in other persons like them. And I know we always kept telling people, and many of these religious people today, they keep, and in history as well, they keep telling people that they are just people who are guides who show people the way, but I don't know, but I know they must struggle a lot with those intentions and transparency and not making the mistakes, and if they make them, to cover up for them, and not wanting more than they started wanting in the beginning, not wanting the power, the lust, the aggression, and the money, and all that's actually in opposition to living a spiritual life, not necessarily living in a poverty or without any power. That's not what's the intention is. You will get a great way of living if you live spiritually, but wherever you are actually, and however you are, and however you're doing it, but it can corrupt you from the inside. As they say, power corrupts. The same does missionary work and religious ideology. It can corrupt you. And so it started like filling my head, and I started being more and more of that kind of ideological person, that culminated with the Khartoum crisis. So that was the pre-area before I started revisiting myself in Greenland and the time beyond Greenland, to look back at where did I go wrong in all this? What did I want, and what did I get, and where did I end up? And so started a very, very hard process, but I took it, as I said, in small paces, because I had to have a life. So I had to keep the normal balances of being the ordinary school teacher and going with my friends, spending time. So I wasn't just sitting all day long thinking about my troubles and my spirituality. But whenever I got the chance, I had to earn my money, and I had to feed my family, and I had to go on with my life. But at the same time, when I got the chance, I started dwelling into these things and started digging into books and ideas, and as I said, the beginning of YouTube back then, listening to some of these people speaking about old philosophers or ways of life and religious ideas in a historic perspective. And so the journey started once again, taking me away, because if you have to find your core, you have to like take off what you have built on. It's like taking off your clothes to shower and to clean your body. You have to do the same with your inner psyche, with your identity. You have to slowly take off that harness, and after the harness you have to take off whatever layers of ideas and clothes and meanings that have been covering you, and stand there all naked. And that was a hard process, and the culmination of it came as late as in what can I say? I think it was in the year 2000 and 2020, between 19 and 20, where I really stood there on the verge of doubting, total doubtness of God and everything. Because up until then, even in 2018, when I published my book, The Courage to Doubt, I wrote in that book that I had God with me, and I can sometimes doubt the idea of God, but I feel God's presence very much. And my motto is that I would always choose spiritualism and belief over atheism, and I will always choose humanism over fundamentalism and extreme ideology. And that was my motto, and tried to find the balance in that. But the big verge of the very critical situation came later, where I really was I felt very, very much abandoned, and I knew that I could look into myself, but at the same time I was experimenting. So I let myself go in these years and went out experimenting with life and ways of life and new environments and new people and all the stuff that I thought I wanted to do when I was a young man, and went on that spiritual journey. But it all brought me back to think and understand that I really wanted the spiritual side of life, and not the deeper ideological religious side. But I didn't want that mediocre middle way of many people just going to a dance floor or a bar, sitting there drinking up and laughing and going home. I tried that as well. I tried everything, and I wanted to experience it all, and I have it all with me today, and that's why I can speak of it with a clear mind and hopefully a clear conscience. And it all brought me back on my knees in front of that one God and one source, because when I came to those situations, in very, very dire straight situations where everything closed around me and I had very dark thoughts that led me to want to die, led me to think of acting in a way so I could get out of this miserable life and my bad ending. I found a way by having the courage to go back and going on my knees and asking God, say, listen, I'm going to ask you, and I'm gonna seek you and look up. And then there I got the answer, not once, but twice and thrice and 4 times. Part of this 10 years spiritual journey was also seeking another religions and ways of life. And basically, I was focused on reconnecting with Denmark. And I want to talk about that in a different video. But this one is focused on my spiritual journey. And part of it was also discovering the spirituality in Christianity and the symbolism that's in its way of practices and what it means and how it uncovers. And part of it was also looking to the Far East and the growing idea of being able to make meditation and clear your way of life without necessarily attaching to a personal God. And I found the Sadhguru, the big guru from the India, who's very inspiring in that matter. And I started learning more and more about how he thinks and what he believes, and started digging into both Hinduism and Buddhism through both books and people I know. I never got to practice with these people in the East. Maybe I will do so one day, just to feel how it is and to live with it and to accept it as also a way of life. But I also contacted some Jewish societies and went to visit them and visit the synagogue in Copenhagen, also to experience a prayer and how they practice and how they are as people and persons. And my biggest flag at that time was combining spiritualism with humanism. But what I found out was most of the people I tried to contact on a humanist way of path of life, at least those I know are known in society, several of them, they never returned back to me. Maybe they didn't like that I was religious. They combined humanism with atheism or with non-belief, or maybe a kind of more neutral way of looking at things, because they want humanism to be free of everything. But I can see they are in bed with atheism, and that's not being neutral at all. And many of them are in bed with very extreme secularism that rejects religious ideas and maybe even spiritual experiences. And that's not, in my opinion, how humanism is. So I'm searching for a religious humanism as it was in the Middle Ages, in the time of Enlightenment and the time of Renaissance in Europe. And the golden ages from the 800s to 1200s in the Muslim societies, where philosophy and religious thoughts and orthodoxy all had this flourishment in societies and people's life. And we got these big persons who lived at that time and could show us the way to some deeper meaning. Some of these I know and some I don't. There were people from the Christian European Society, who big names, and I know there is a guy online who speaks about religion and speak about these ways of the mystics and about the big names in religious history. And as said, I know some of these and some I don't. But it seems that's always been the case, that people from also, like I remember Augustine now, and remember Al-Ghazali, and remember Ibn Arabi, and I remember Thomas Aquinas and Francis Assisi and many more from the two societies I know about. And I've heard of several gurus. And besides Sadhguru, I started also listening to Krishnamurti and listening to what he's expressing in his own ways. And there were also some other gurus of India that were very, very famous before that. I just can't remember the names at this instant. I can get the picture of them in my head, and Ramakrishna I remember now, and there were several others referred to also by Sadhguru and Jiddu Krishnamurti, um, it was all like a package for me that showed me that it's like as if people are seeking the source in different ways. And I know this idea seems well known to many today, but also blasphemic to many others, because they think you won't find God unless you succumb to the one truth in the one way. And maybe that's also true, that you have to find one way and stick to it, and one religion and accept it, but watch out for the ideological sides and for the violent sides of it, because that's a trick. The passion of spirituality is like to understand truly that you can passively accept being put on the cross, as happened to what the Christians believe happened to Jesus, to Yeshua al-Masih, and the Muslims believed happened to the same prophet, but that his friend took his place instead, so that he could be taken up as an alternative. That's why people kept seeing Jesus walking around after his crucifixion. And it's about like letting yourself and your ego go and not fighting it and not being aggressive. And that's a very hard thing to do for a human in this life, giving up the animalistic side of us and the what Freud called the urges of life and death, that we are actually these energies drive us. Now when we are in a situation of danger, we fight or we fly or we try to hide ourselves, because we want the self-protection and self-preservation drift, as I think he called it. And that's very deep-rooted in humans. And so the spirituality is rising you and your spirit above that, so you don't get afraid, neither of the sword or an animal or anything that's going to hit you, or the loss that will come in your life or can surround you. Don't let it hurt you, because get attached to the higher and more spiritual sphere in your life, and in God and the ways of the prophets and the way of people who are seeking life beyond this life, not because this life isn't important to take care of. And on the contrary, you learn every aspect of taking care of life by seeking the spiritual means, because you get to learn that without taking care of yourself in this life and taking care of life around you as much as you can, you are not serving the bigger and spiritual idea of God. That's why he put us here, so we could have a great way of living. But because we have neglected all that, and the people only looking at this life, some reactionary has put themselves in a situation where they only look at the heavenly spheres and the life after, like the ascetics and people living in monasteries and religious figures who keep only chanting and dancing all the time. And we need these people as well to show us that it's possible. It's possible to get as close as possible away from attachment to this life, and look at all these people who are living in big societies and towns and rushing from work to home, to earning money. They are really in a trap they can't see the way out of, and some of them commit suicide or get stress or go to therapy or try to find way in psychological ideas, and they never get satisfactory. But maybe the existential psychology can offer some of these answers, because they are more open and perceptible than some of the other ways to the spiritual ideas. I'm not saying that the mental processes of healing people is not good, but they all dig back into the same. Find yourself and your identity and calmness, and accept. It all goes back to these four existential ideas, that you live in fear and doubt, and there is acceptance, and then you have hope. And these four are surrounding you at all time. But sometimes you go to that by mental therapy, and other times people use meditation and body mental awareness to calm people down, NLP, and using the right language and right way of thinking about yourselves and others, that helps you out of a lot of trouble. But it's all lacking that deep rooted spiritual calmness that you will get if you can give yourself up to these spiritual ways. I know I'm talking passionately about this because I've lived it and I've lived without it for a long time. I tried actually suppressing it and putting it aside, and I said to myself, I will not be in contact with God for a long time because I want to live the life that people lives. How is it to live without being in contact with God or spiritual ideas? How is it not praying? How is it not asking? How is it not always thinking about God, but about yourself and the books you read and the people you meet and the culture you go to and the music you listen to, and just try to figure out life without having this upper dimension, without thinking angels are there or devils or people or heavenly spheres. It's just me and the other people. It's just us here, and we have to figure it out. And I was there. I lived there in several years. I can tell you, it's easy to get turned over, and you get trouble and you get the wrong decisions. At least I did. Maybe I was not the right person to live that kind of life, but I know from many other experienced people and the experience of religious life that people had or didn't have and got, they can tell you of the difference. There is a big difference of living without it and with it. So it's not random. It's not only me who found that there is a big difference of trying to find your way without this contact with the upper level and the deeper level inside you and through you, and the ways of contacting the source of life and getting the help and getting the calmness, no matter what you are and how you turn out. And that's what makes religion in some way strong, but also dangerous, because some people build on these spiritual issues to use it in ideological manner that can be psychopathy, like when they go out killing people with no fear, or blowing themselves up, or hijacking a plane, or kidnapping kids from the other side of the fence and keeping them in tunnels. It's because these people have used the spiritual energies to become ideologically manipulated by hatred and by punishment, and thinking that God is with them and will be supporting them, and they are not afraid of anything, waiting to get to the afterlife to get their reward. But I think all this can be a trick, can be a very dangerous trick in the religious path, and that's exactly what the guy I read about in the young days, called Ibn Qayyim Jawziyah. He was a man who was between the orthodoxy and the Sufi ways. He had a teacher from the Sufis and a teacher from the orthodoxies. In the Islamic teachings, he lived in the 1500s. And he wrote a beautiful book called The Upper Going Steps to Those Who Are Seeking the Higher Spheres, Madarij al-Salikin wa Manazil al-Rabbaniyin. And he wanted to explicitly talk about how to get up to these steps where you can see the realms of life and the heavens within you, and also understanding that he said that the trick of the devil, because religious ideas believe in the devil, the trickster, the one who wants to make people not understand and see the spiritual way. He say this devil doesn't care whether he takes you on the road of religious extremism or non-religious extremism. So it's a lot of tricks anyway. And just by sitting here talking, I don't know if I'm doing the right thing, because I should maybe just be silent and basically just turn towards my inner self. And I can feel I lose energy by doing this now, and I'm giving something up that I shouldn't, and I'm not ready for. And maybe I'm just afraid and scared that I should die without telling my story. And why should I be that? If I'm looking towards God and the spheres and the heavens, I shouldn't care whether others listened to my message or not, knew who I was or not. And I shouldn't care whether other people really put me in the right context or not, because I'm starting to get beyond that. And I'm so grateful. And this is something that I finally got back to after now 2008, let's say to 2014, from 14 to 24. So 10 years plus, give and take 5-6 years of a journey that put me back on the first tracks, and at the same time on a totally new way of life and new tracks. Yeah, that was a small account of my spiritual journey that led me back to the fundamental idea of asking the one God and the one God only, and connecting to Him in a way that's through the heart and the feelings, and by trying to bring His presence into my life in every second. This God's presence is beautiful if we don't use it and misuse it to things that shouldn't be used to. And at the same time, I can relate to practices of other religions, even though I have to maintain my own basic religion of the Muslim way of seeing things in the Sufi tradition. Because that's what I was given from birth. I was given a Muslim parent. We have Christian parents as well, grandparents, but well, basically, I'm raised in that way, and I'm given that role in life, and that's what's gonna be my connections. But I can relate. I can relate to today how Buddhist and monastery people and Hinduist and how Sadhguru like is bringing about the message of meditation without religion. But I can't follow the same practices to the depth. But I can relate to it, and I can understand how people also can find a lot of peace there, and bring themselves out of fear, because fear is the biggest enemy of humans, as Gandhi said. It's not hatred, it's fear, and it's fear that leads us to do a lot of things that we didn't think we would do. And cleaning your inner self, and cleaning all your thoughts and bringing it to a zero and to a hold. That's a beautiful thing that he's working for, and he has an audience because he knows how to talk to people so they can listen to what he's saying, and those who listen gets the message in a way that actually and hopefully makes them a better group of people, better persons in their own life, with their families, and when they deal with others and deal with other countries and people. So hopefully it's bringing more consciousness about who we are and how we could avoid the mistakes of the past and of ourselves, and falling into the pits of anger and hatred and wars and destruction. That's what we all want. So why not? And I see the same spiritual living and tears and works in the Christian people who are seeking God within mysticism or meditation in a Christian way, or just keeping to the practices of Jesus and the love for God through Jesus, the light of the life as they see it. And I love that, because I see that this brings them, hopefully, towards a more compassionate way of seeing life and things, and being more passive towards aggression, and being more forgiving towards themselves and others, and having insights in how spirituality can develop them and develop themselves. That's a lot better than these people wandering around, not knowing what's up and down. And I see that in people who go with arts. Arts can be, in many variations. The art can be a way to spiritual enlightenment and to human enlightenment and ecstasy, and a way of like floating over life. But once they sink down again, they have trouble of maintaining, many of these people in art, maintaining the balances, because they don't know what happened, and they fall down to the reality, and they want to get up again and get away from it all, and they start practicing things that perhaps not are the most healthiest in the world. And the same happens to religious people. They sometimes can practice things that's not the healthiest in the world either, because they want to get up to those spheres and they can't stay there, and they make mistakes and fall back down, and then the hatred and the suppression and sometimes actions that's not according to the spiritual teachings start happening and occurring, which makes the corruption widespread in also religious communities. And so we are all corrupt by many ways, and we have to forgive that, but we have also to rise above it. And I found the spiritual journey very, very fruitful for me even though it's painful, and I don't know if it never ends and if it will end. And I remember one of my friends quoting one old scholar from the Mid Ages saying that the journey is the way, and the way never ends until we reach the end of God's grace. So whoever we are and however we imagine paradise or life afterwards, and whoever we see is the Savior, we should keep an open mind and heart that other people find the way to spirituality and deeper insights and the source of light, even though they don't follow your strict beliefs, whether it's in Jesus or in Buddha or Krishna or Shiva or follow a certain monk or a certain imam, or are the followers of Muhammad. And I know, I'm my background as a Muslim, and I follow the Muslim teachings that you have to follow, and you have to accept, and you have to like in many ways just give yourself over, take the leap of faith, as Indiana Jones says to his son. The father says to his son in the movie. It's fiction, but it's not fiction at all. It's the deep truth. You have sometimes to take a leap of faith, and that's what Søren Kierkegaard also wrote about, the Danish philosophers. Anyhow, I will get back to my journey with the Danish thoughts and ideas, and my spiritual journey within reconnecting with Denmark spiritually and culturally in maybe another talk. But here I just wanted to highlight the spiritual journey and its difficulty for me, and where it led me from the Khartoum crisis and up to now. And I hope deeply that I am on a path and in a way. I can feel it inside me. It's bubbling very strongly and very beautifully, and I hope I can keep it there, and I can keep an eye on keeping these energies working very well together, integrating my senses and my mind and my way of thinking. And I've chosen to go back to my original identity and way of thinking within the first spaces I took into that Muslim community, because I found peace in it. But today I'm enlightened about the Christian ways, which I also relate to and feel part of, and I'm related to the Hinduistic ways, which I also feel very strongly compassionate about. And I, even though they have some practices that it's not for me to follow, but anything that brings people closer to a way of opening their eyes to the wisdom of the prophets and life, or the wisdom of the light God has spread among us, that we are lost souls, we are lost people, unless we are guided and can find any kind of way to reconnect with our deeper energies and soul energies. And that's what I hope I'm doing right now, and have been doing for some time. And I hope others can relate to that as well, because we need it. We need it as a movement in life, and we need it as a way of making consolation. And everyone wants to win. It's not about winning. You know, the Christian communities, societies, and politicians and Western world wants to win and be above everybody else, and they are contested by the Chinese Buddhist and non-Buddhist and atheist, and they are contested by the Orthodoxy in the Russia, and by the Islamic world, who will be coming back very soon on track. They can't keep them down forever, and I promise you they will be back with double force, and they will double back to where they have been. And the same will happen to the Jewish community. They see themselves as the chosen people, and indeed they should take that responsibility on them, bringing the world to a better place. That's what it means to be chosen by God. That means you are the guidance, you are the ones who show people the light, and that's what the song from the Beatles is all about. Hey Jude, don't make it hard, and remember who you are, and don't forget, and all these like simple words, but they are actually expressing a lot more. That with great powers comes great responsibilities, as we know from Superman, and as we know from, I think it was one of the Jewish leaders who had this quote. So I can relate to them all today. I'm so happy. I'm so happy because I can see it their ways as I can see it my way. I couldn't do that in the beginning and as a young man, because I had to to isolate myself to one view and one life. And then came the orthodoxy and the the, um, the ideology that took over in me and made me see the world from one certain and close perspective, and it has to win all over all the others. But maybe it's all about everyone losing and or maybe winning on turn. As we see in history, sometimes these cultures win and the others lose, and then they come back and win over those who they lost to in the beginning, and they sit all there frustrated. But if you can see it from a spiritual sphere, well, it's always to grow, and I hope that God always make those who are most worthy have the winnings and have the power, and those who are less destructive have the power. And I think that's what's happening. Power keeps shifting in the hands of those who are less destructive and who can keep it and keep the world safe or bring it up to a higher level so it doesn't get into total self-destruction. In the end, it will destruct because we will lose everything. But we have to keep trying, even though we are dying. And that's what I also remember from my youth. That I don't know if it's a saying that's true from Muhammad, but I think everybody would have said it. That if the apocalyptic days are over you and the earth is getting destructed and you have a small palm in your hand and you can dig it into the earth, if you have time to put that small tree in the earth, do it. Don't say, well, the nukes are all gone mad and now it's just a matter of time. Put that last tree in the earth. You never know. And that's the everything we have in this spiritual life, to be able to see the beauty of growing and contesting our bad and negative side that keeps drawing us downwards and taking us into a darkness that we are in. We are in an abyss. I believe today we are in a great shallowy abyss. Generations are being like fed either with some extremist thoughts, manipulated thoughts, or very, very shallow way of thinking. Nobody dares look into religion and ideology anymore because they think, oh, that's all going to be mad and bad, and so we are on a track that certainly will destruct us, because shallowness and lack of consciousness and understanding, a lot of dumbness, and ignorance, greed, and lust for power and food and greed in any ways. They will destruct us for sure. And the opposing force to that is every community on earth working on spiritual enlightenment. And so why not support it? Why not work together or leave each other to work together on that? And to find the happiness in the growth of the individuals within these spiritual communities and religious communities that's promoting spiritual growth. That's where I stand, and I hope that's the light I'm seeing now, and I hope it's good, and I hope it's part of what's necessary for a development in life. And so here I am in my spiritual journey. Still going on, still digging deeper, but very, very happy of the relaxation and understanding. And maybe I'm not good enough, I'm not doing enough, and I'm just a watcher from the sideline. Maybe I feel powerless as well as many others, spending my time watching YouTube and spending my time searching for work to do, or reading books, or helping my doing my responsibilities within my family and small sphere. And maybe that's all we can do in these times. And some other people have the power in their hands. We have some big leaders today in the world, and some billionaires who are 200 times richer than the richest man on earth at Pharaoh's time before. And these people sit with very, very great responsibilities, and they sit with very, very great what can you say, possibilities as well. But how deep are their spiritual understanding and consciousness of the light they have to carry to the world. And how shallow are they? Are their friends and people who are advising them around them? That's the trouble. Every big leader anywhere on earth, if they want to succeed, they need a group of spiritual, enriched people around them, not just religious people who can chant songs and prayers for them, or some shamanic helpers who can foretell them the future, or say a few cryptic words about their future, or look into their palms. They need deeply spiritual people just surrounding them, so they always can get a tap of this source and these sources of light in order to fulfill their responsibilities and the possibilities they have within the power they've got from whoever source they've got it from. But it's all because God's will have let it happen that way, and he can take it and give it to whom he wants, how he wants, in the way he wants, he or she, or what it is. God is not a male, he's not a she-male, and he's not a female, he's nothing we know about. He's a source of our life and creation, and people can find this way of spiritual thinking. Maybe some see it in one way, others in another way, but it all has to enhance us and enhance our spiritual understanding and living, and that's what I deeply hope for. Otherwise, as Schopenhauer said, we are the hell and heaven of earth and of each other, and that's exactly true. So many philosophers also tapped in those big ideas and made them more simple and easier to understand. We can turn life to hell or heaven for each one of us. These riches some people have, they can make millions and millions happy, and we can get rid of both poverty and drug problems and gangs. We can do it. It's not so hard. But unfortunately, people with less spiritual enrichment, they are speculating in keeping it and using it, and feel weak against it, and they want just to deal with it as it is. So that's because many of us are like that. Our leaders also turn like that. People get the leaders they deserve, or the leaders that reflects who they are. So whenever we have some certain type of leaders, that's because we should look deeper into ourselves, society, and way of living, and our values. And our values will show us the way to our spiritual enrichment or lack of it. And the leaders we will get and the way they will use us or help us will be a reflection of how we are and what we would do if we were in their place as well. Thank you. That was, I think, all. I can keep on going, but that was just to give an account of this matter of the spiritual journey I have been on time after the Khartoum crisis. Goodbye.